All right, we are live. It is 7 o'clock in London. It is 11 a.m. in San Francisco. It's in the future in Sydney. I think it's just gone 6 a.m. And in Dubai, it's 11 o'clock this evening. And of course, in Wellington, it's 8 a.m. tomorrow. So we are tuning in from around the world. We've got Carlos Fulcher checking in from Philadelphia. We've got Dianne. I believe she's in North Carolina today. And we've got Melissa out of San Francisco. And I'm sitting here in London. And we'll cover the usual format, very much Q&A driven. We'll also have two special guests. We're hoping to tune in due course, Barbara Puffer, the chair of the IABC Ethics Committee. And we'll also, by proxy, Sue Human, the chair of the GCCC, which is the Global Communication Certification Council, who today will actually be represented by Dianne Chase, the vice chair of IABC, who is also the liaison to that group, as Sue unfortunately wasn't able to make it today. So we've got the usual format. We'll talk through a few updates from the IABC board. We'll talk through a couple of things happening at the headquarters and so on. And then, as I mentioned, we're definitely looking for lots and lots of questions from you out in the field. Starting off right at the top, I'm very excited to share a little bit about what happened at the most recent board meeting. And specifically there, we recognized a number of people for the work done around the location of the IABC headquarters. As you may know, you have basically the benefits of headquarters, which is based out of San Francisco, which has been based in the financial district for some years. But our lease has come to an end, and about a year ago, we tasked a small group of people to basically look at alternative locations for that. And I specifically want to thank Terry Serisols, past member of the board, Michael Ambjorn, Jan Hoover as well, and of course our treasurer, Ginger Holman, and last but definitely not least, Carlos and his staff, who've been working very hard on this. And that's a really important change, because one of the most basically, what can I put it like, cash-ready things that we've done in recent times, basically bringing in a $350,000 saving for us in the first year. If that's not something to be excited about, I don't know what. But actually, much more importantly, over time, it also constitutes a shift in line with the strategy that we set out for the organization, of basically moving IABC into the 21st century to be a little bit more location independent. And in fact, increasingly, staff are based around the country these days. So, Carlos, would you maybe speak a little bit more to the move, what people should expect, and so on, in the coming weeks, please?
Thank you, Michael. It'd be my pleasure to speak a little bit more about the move, which is, as you mentioned, it's been a project that's been running for now a considerable amount of time, over a year. And I also would like to thank the members of the task force that helped frame and educate the board in the decision to relocate the office. So really appreciate all the input that was provided in a very collaborative way. Quite a bit of savings there, redefining the organization as well. Those are really important points as we look beyond just moving the office, but really advancing the organization in the right direction to be more nimble and flexible and be able to secure resources beyond the San Francisco Bay Area, which were limiting to the organization in the past. So very excited about that. The move actually is going to physically take place starting on the 29th. We've been already packing up materials are in the office and preparing to move literally 4 blocks down the street. We are currently located on 601 Montgomery Street, and we're going to be moving down to 155 Montgomery Street. It's a Class B building. It's a smaller space than we've occupied in the past. For those who have been in the office, it is a little bit more modest, but very appropriate for the type of organization that we are as a nonprofit membership organization, so that we are looking after the member dollars and making sure that we put them in the right place, and really looking to reinvest, if you would, in programs and services for the organization. So the 29th, we expect to have some disruptive of service as we complete the switch. We have moved over the last 12 months from a technology standpoint to cloud-based type of solutions. So our technology infrastructure now, except for our telephone services, is something that's 100% cloud-based. Our phone service is something we're going to be looking at in the future, but for now it's on-premise, and that needs to be moved. So an interruption of service there is planned for the 29th. And barring any unanticipated changes or unanticipated issues, we expect to be live at the new office for folks who are local to San Francisco on the 1st of February. So just as we head out to the 2016 LI at Laguna Beach, California, staff is going to be in its new digs, its new office space for the event. I'll be happy to take any questions now or later, but thank you, and really excited about this change.
I'll try on mute. That's great. Thanks, Carlos. I wonder, could you just speak a little bit more to also the culture change that you're driving within IABC, working with staff around especially remote locations and so on, and give us a view of kind of the diversity of people that we're able to basically engage now.
Thank you, Michael. And that is part of the change that's been put in place, again, over the last 12 months or so, even longer, which is to securing staff that's really talented in specific areas for the organizational needs. So we have staff that's located in the DC area and the Colorado area. I'm here in Philadelphia, and we have folks in Pittsburgh. So we're bringing in the virtually staff that's highly qualified in the specific areas that they have responsibilities for. And part and parcel of that is to introduce and drive a collaborative work environment, so that staff is working collaboratively internally with staff, but also working in a very similar way with our committees and task forces as we look to advance the work of the organization. Big changes there, and I think in some areas we're already seeing some significant improvements as we look at our products and as well as our experience.
That's great. Thank you, Carlos. Okay, so just moving on with a couple of other items from the recent board meeting. As we covered last month, of course, we are already now in the new financial year. IABC organizes its financial year on a January to December basis, and we have a balanced budget. And actually, Carlos hinted at a couple of things there. With part of that saving, we will reinvest that specifically in technology to make sure that we basically meet the requirements of the 21st century, specifically in an association management system, in a learning management system, and so on. But also, talking on the cash front, a key part of our strategy, of course, is also to look after our investments. And George McGrath reported from the investment committee that IABC investments are performing in line with current market expectations. Now, let me unpack that a little bit for you. You might have noticed there's some volatility in the markets, so we should also expect that's basically how IABC's investments are moving in line with. But the key thing I want to emphasize here is that IABC is not a high-risk investor, so we tend to take safe bets rather than high-risk ones. The next item that we reviewed with much anticipation and excitement, of course, is the IABC Leadership Institute, which is coming up very shortly in Los Angeles. And Dianne, I wonder whether you might just speak a little bit more to the Leadership Institute, please.
Thank you, Michael. We are extremely excited about this year's Leadership Institute. Inspire the Leader in You is the theme for this year, and we are seeing fantastic participation so far, but we very much encourage leaders to register if you have not done so. And in fact, online registration and the hotel block, that online opportunity ends tomorrow. So don't hesitate if you have not yet registered for LI. It will be a really fantastic program. We have outstanding presenters within the IABC community who can motivate you, mentor you, give you new ways of thinking about your leadership, both within the organization and also outside of IABC. So these are skills that we want to help you develop. We want to connect you with the right people who can provide that expertise that you're looking for as a member of IABC, and use those leadership skills both within our organization and also in your professional career as well. So again, we are very much looking forward to it. And again, online registration in the hotel block in tomorrow.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I think there's a keynote as well closing out. Is that one you might be able to speak a little bit more to as well?
Is our closing keynote. And she will definitely lead you. You're going to get all sorts of skills. You're going to learn new ways of thinking and new opportunities to improve as a leader. And then she is going to send you back to your home and your chapter inspired with some new energy. I saw her present at the Canada West Region Conference. I almost said East. Canada West Region, and she was really dynamic. So I know you're going to enjoy her. Look her up, Michelle Ray.
Michelle Ray, great, excellent. We'll tweet out a link to. I think she's got a book out there, so people can check that out in advance if they want to, and maybe even get a signed copy if they're into that kind of thing. Fantastic. The other thing that we'll do is we will also talk about the leadership survey. Big thanks to all who participated in that. So we'll basically dissect that, and we'll talk about next steps, how we can work together to grow the association, to make it a stronger association, and really move the profession forward. And so I appreciate that. Thank you, Dianne. The next thing we talked about at the board meeting was a discussion brought forward by the Fellows Task Force. This is a group that we put together early on this year, in the board year, led by Brad Whitworth, and also with quite a lot of support from Anna Willey, another IABC fellow, and then Robin McCaslin, the past chair of the association. And they brought a set of recommendations directed to the board, specifically around how we can make sure that we have a good, solid, strong fellow program that can be sustained for the future, and really ultimately advance and elevate IABC standing in the community. I'll tweet out a link so you can read more details on that. And I'm also really excited about the fact that we are working on, the fellows don't know this yet, I'm not sure, but we're working on setting up a specific call with them to get some additional views from them as we develop this further. The key thing is you should be looking out for the annual call for fellow nominations in the coming months. Of course, we're looking to do what we normally do at World Conference, which is to unveil a set of world-class communicators that warrant that level of recognition. Other things from the recent board meeting, let's have a quick look here. We talked about the brand positioning specifically for the World Conference. We had Stacey Wilson along, and she specifically presented on the work that her committee's done to prepare for this summer in New Orleans. I'm very excited about that, partially because a small location, a geographical location called Frenchman Street, where all the jazz is to be found, but also because of the fact that we've got Jeff Colvin as a keynote. He's an expert on basically the interface between artificial intelligence and how it relates to modern working. And one of his practical scars from the real life is the fact that he's actually lost in jeopardy to IBM's Watson, if I'm not mistaken. But then again, I think most people would not be able to win that. So on that note, though, I want to turn to Carlos and ask him if he might just speak a little bit more to some of the things that are coming up at a World Conference, and also at this point in time, maybe talk a little bit around sponsorship and so on, because we've got a great lineup, but we are also always looking for more people who are looking for an opportunity to get an exposure to vibrant, hardworking, senior strategic advisors, basically the kind of people who come to World Conference.
Thank you, Michael. And absolutely, the 2016 World Conference in New Orleans is really shaping up to be a great program. In addition, we have already made an announcement on the second keynote with Helen Marriage, with another strong keynote for the event. And shortly, we have an announcement on the third keynote that we've just secured. So great thanks to the Program Advisory Committee with the leadership of Stacey Wilson, as you mentioned earlier, is really helping to put together what's going to be a very strong program. in New Orleans. Hopefully we'll see everyone down there have the opportunity to experience the event and then learn also from the sessions that are taking place. Sponsorship is an area of opportunity for the organization, and we've over the last 15, 18 months have put significant amount of effort into growing this new or this product line for the organization. And in 2015, we saw what turned out to be a great exhibit floor. We call it the hub, an area where you can come and not only interact with our exhibitors and sponsors, but also learn new tools and new skills that are available in the market. We're going to carry that forward in 2016 with an expanded hub, so additional exhibitors are going to be there, as well as the concept of a theater sponsorship or product theaters, if you would, where you can come in and learn directly from the exhibitors about products and how to use products and how they can be useful to you as a tool and bring that back to your work environment. So again, very excited about this program. I think it's going to carry forward the momentum that we created in 2015, and it's going to be even a bigger success. Thank you.
Days together as a board, and we will take up actually a topic that's very close to my heart, which is the IABC Foundation. It is something that we've had on a little bit of a hold for a while, simply because we've been busy dragging IABC into the 21st century on a range of other fronts. But now the time is ripe to pick up on that conversation again, and I want to express particular appreciation to a set of people out there who've contributed to that conversation so far. Jan out of the Golden Horseshoe chapter, and Michael Simmet as well, who really helped us think about this by adding some of the historical background, and of course also Michael Ambjorn, who's been very active on this. So we're bringing that back to the front. If you've got particular ideas, you are welcome to reach out. You can reach out to me, Carlos, Dianne. We're all interested in hearing what you might have to say. But the other things that we'll have coming up at that meeting is a further discussion around World Conference, what it might look like beyond 2016. We've got to keep an eye to the future. We've got to stay strategic, of course. We'll also hear from the Communications Committee, which is working away in the background. That and a range of other topics. But of course, we also welcome the opportunity for you to ask questions directly off the board, and there'll be an opportunity for that at the Leadership Institute. We're going to move on to our proxy Sue Human, which is Dianne Chase, in just a moment. Before we do that, I just want to quickly check if we've got any questions in so far, Melissa.
Gabby Loring asked us about tweeting from LI, from the Leadership Institute, and about the hashtag, and so certainly we will be tweeting from there, and the hashtag is IABCLI. And just anyone else who wants to submit a question, the best way to do it is on Twitter, and just use the hashtag IABCIEB, and we'll find your question there, or use the Q&A function here on Google+.
Great, thanks, Melissa. And yes, we do have, for some it might seem like a bewildering number of hashtags, but actually those who use a library will be familiar with the numbers at the back of the book. It might be the Congress, US Congress number, it might be the Dewey Decimal System, depending on where you are in the world, it might be something third. Essentially, a hashtag is not too dissimilar like that. It's basically a way of very quickly finding something that's been tagged with something. So for LI, we tend to keep the hashtag the same for year to year, because most of the topics are in some cases evergreen. So it means that if you keep scrolling, eventually you will get to the earlier years. Whereas of course an event like World Conference tends to basically move on a little bit. In which case it shouldn't be too hard to guess what it is in 2016, because in 2015 it was #IABC 15. And in 2016, it'll be #IABC 16. And let me see, #IABC 17. I think that might be right. Great. We will turn now to our proxy Sue Human from the Global Communication Certification Council, also today known as Dianne Chase. Vice Chair of IABC and past Chair of the Southern Region. Dianne, might you tell us a little bit more about, first of all, what is this alphabet soup of the GCCC? Can you tell us what that is?
It's a lovely alphabet, isn't it? GCCC, and it's fun to say, too. It is the Global Communication Certification Council, which is why we call it GCCC. It's much shorter. But we are thrilled with the participation that we've had for seeking our new certification called the Communication Management Professional. And to date, we have 15 CMPs. Now, this certification is really special because we are in the process of seeking sanctioning from ISO. So the status of this certification is really going to be elevated and really something very valuable in the professional marketplace in our industry. So what I would encourage you very much to go to the IABC website. You'll find all sorts of information about the certification program and the process, some preparation tools, the dates. We're thrilled with the participation that we're having from chapters and regions around the world to host a CMP. And that includes, I've made some notes here, 11 global geographic locations all the way through October of this year have signed up to host one of the exams, and they include US, Canada, Europe, Australia, and Africa. And the next one actually is coming at Leadership Institute. So the day before Leadership Institute starts, there will be a certification exam being held as well. And the next level of the certification program is going to be aimed at the strategic advisor level. So the more senior communication level, we're thrilled about that. This is a process we believe adds to the senior communicators who are looking to be business leaders. As we know, we have the four communication professional levels established within IABC, and these top two levels are really going to be the focus for the next certification exam.
Right. And let's just I'm getting a little bit let's try again. There we go. And I see Barbara joining us. That's great. So let's just talk a little bit more about the certification specifically from an ISO point of view. So ISO is the International Standards Organization. It's one of the organizations that large corporates, government bodies, and so on look to basically verify things. Those of you who work with manufacturers might be familiar with ISO 9000, which basically checks if a quality system in place. And in our case, it's what we're looking to do eventually with this is to test it so that we can prove that it basically meets the type of standards for certifications that people are gaining these days, not just from IABC, but also institutes like, for example, the Project Management Institute. So the key point, though, is that it's not a standard for communication. It's a standard for certification. So it's testing the viability and the efficacy of the certification, just to avoid any confusion on that front. Do you want to check if we've got any questions in for our Human proxy in the form of Dianne Chase?
No, we don't have any at the minute.
Any at the minute, but we do have Barbara Puffer, long-standing IABC fellow and chair of our ethics committee. Barbara, have you got any questions on the Global Communication Certification Council? Let's see if we can hear Barbara.
You're talking to me.
I'm talking to you, yes.
Okay, yes, I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you for tuning in.
So,
let's move straight on with ethics. I wonder whether you might share a little bit of the journey that the ethics committee's been on since being basically re-established in the last couple of years, and also what you're working on right at the moment.
Sure. So I'll ask a rhetorical question. When was the last time you read the Code of Ethics? Other than you, Michael. Maybe other than Carlos. Anybody I can see on the picture. It is a rhetorical question, but do you know that every single time you renew your membership or we would get a new member, you sign you check off and confirm. I'll read it exactly the way it is. I have reviewed and understand the IABC Code of Ethics for Professional Communicators. So it seems like a simple action, but it's one that really confirms your commitment to professionalism at a very high standard. It's not a new thing in IABC. We've had it for decades, but I think it's something like many things in our lives that we just take for granted and don't spend a lot of time thinking about our own personal responsibility. And this new ethics committee that was formed at the end of 2014 was really to rejuvenate the effort to help us, help members think about its application and how it applies to our personal lives. So committees aren't new either for ethics. They've been around a long time too. But at some points it was a little loose as to how complaints were investigated, how the code points were applied, how much education we had around the code and things like that, and it got loose over the years. So the IAB put a new committee in place at the end of 2014. The very first things we did were to look at the application process of when we get a complaint, how do we handle it, how do we document it, how do we archive it in case a similar matter comes up in the future. The other thing we looked at was a change in the language, not in the spirit of the code, but to change the language to more reflect the increasing globalness of our organization, making it a little easier to read, trying to get rid of some ambiguous language that might mean one thing in the US might mean something else somewhere else in the world, or maybe it was too precise. So we've drafted a new code, and that's been kicking around. I think some of you have seen it. The IAB has certainly seen it. In the leadership group in LinkedIn, we've offered you an opportunity to talk about it. We haven't had a lot of feedback there, but we also sought other comments on the draft from people in and outside of IABC who are experts in the area of ethics and applied ethics and professional ethics. And we're still talking about that as a committee. What happens next is we're to give the IAB a new draft in March for their March meeting. And then, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but that draft that the IAB decides upon will be voted on at the annual general meeting in June. That's accurate, right, Michael?
That is correct, absolutely.
All right, but there are some other things that are going to happen. For example, at LI, there is a session on ethics. Now, unfortunately, I've been involved in one of its competitive sessions sponsorship, and I know that's all very well attended, but I'm hoping leaders will send somebody into the ethics session where Nigel Glennie from Cisco is going to lead a discussion about what chapters might need, what they might do, what regions might need and do to keep that conversation going. And then also at World Conference, on Wednesday of World Conference, there will be an ethics panel that's still evolving, but it'll be led by Jane Mitchell, a former IAB member who has a lot of experience in this area. So we are going to put this in front of you and ask you to think a little harder about it than you might have recently, with the idea that it's an ongoing, living, breathing code that is more important than just us checking it off each year when we renew our dues.
Right. Thank you for that.
Let me add one other thing. When you do have a complaint, when somebody does have a complaint, feels that somebody has violated our code ethically, you can contact IABC, and IABC will refer it to the committee. Every one of our members have been selected through a competitive process, just with other committees. They're they all have connections to the content of what ethics pushes for discussion. They all sign a confidentiality agreement, and they also sign a conflict of interest agreement, and we also bring that up again at the beginning of every single meeting to be sure that nobody has a conflict with people, cases, issues that are on our agenda. So you can feel, I mean, nothing's ever 100%, but you could feel 99.9% maybe that of a complaint would be handled confidentially and carefully. And some of the sanctions include things as going as far as refusing somebody membership. So it is important, especially in our digital world. There are many more opportunities to purposely or not violate a professional code of ethics. So it's an important discussion that needs to be revived and ongoing. And I hope you like the draft and will comment so we can tighten this up. And there's nothing to say we can't change it again, modify it again if something's too confusing in another year. But this will be a lot simpler to read, I think.
Great, thank you very much, Barbara. And really to your point there around open calls, so we do open calls for committees. There'll be more open calls in the coming year for opportunities to step up to committees, not just ethics. We recently, for example, filled the editorial committee. Next month we will have John Clemens with us talking about the work that he's doing with that committee. There's the communications committee. There's in fact 21 separate committees in IABC working away almost 24 hours a day, as we do have people around the world. They're all listed on the website. So if you are interested in stepping up, do look out for an opportunity. Now, have we got any questions for Barbara by any chance?
I don't have any questions for Barbara. I have a question related to CMP.
Yep.
So it's Gabby Loring again. Hi, Gabby. She is wanting to know if if chapters are going to be informed when someone in their chapter gets their CMP qualification.
That's a great question, and yes, indeed, that is the case. We will notify chapters and regions, and the goal is to, when possible, to have a formal presentation of a certificate, perhaps by chapter leaders at a professional development event, but definitely to recognize the new CMPs in their local areas as much as possible. Also, please do go to the website because we have some fantastic stories from some of our new CMPs about their journey and the reason they sought the certification and some of the lessons learned and that kind of thing.
Great.
And there are some new ones coming soon as well on that page. New stories.
Great.
So that we'll tweet a link to that. Any other questions coming in, or any questions that Dianne might have for Barbara, or vice versa?
Well, thanks, Michael. So, Barbara, hi. Maybe I love the topic that you included in terms of our social media world, offering more opportunity, shall we say, for ethical decisions to become cloudy. So I don't know if you have any examples of maybe what we should be more aware of in terms of ethical decision making within our organization.
Well, first I would say that we're hoping through this communication process, which hasn't come easily because we don't get a lot of responses, frankly. We hope through this process before the new vote that we learn of some problems out in the field. Now, we have heard of some that didn't come to us as formal complaints. They just came to us as questions to think about. Some of them revolve around chapters, how people are reimbursed for services, maybe officers, you know, what's ethical, what's common, what's seen as okay. There were a lot of questions around student chapters, and can we, for example, hire a student leader to do something for the chapter and maybe pay them like a work study, scholarship type of thing. There were questions around how people use our IABC name. There are people out there in the world saying their IABC blog or discussion group that aren't officially IABC. Where do we go with that, and why doesn't IABC chase everybody down. There are questions related to the gray areas around who's considered media and who's considered a member, and are there differences in how they can treat the organization. There's the old stories about the creative content and how you attribute your sources and plagiarism and copyright and all that, which has become very cloudy with the internet. Those are the ones off the top of my head. That's a long list right there.
All right, thank you for that. And specifically for World Conference, I just want to talk a little bit more about the opportunity that our leaders have to basically come along and have a conversation around ethics. As Barbara mentioned, there'll be the opportunity quite soon at Leadership Institute, but also a World Conference specifically to help us reaffirm really that revisited code of ethics, and that will take place at the annual general meeting. And actually, this is an opportune moment to talk a little bit about the fact that we're going to bring some changes to the annual general meeting in the coming year. Carlos and I have been working along with the executive committee on some ideas around how we can make it a more engaging and interactive experience. Also, as a board, we've looked at the timing of the AGM. Generally, it falls more or less halfway through the conference, and it kind of interrupts the proceedings of the conference to a certain extent. So we're actually moving it up front. We're going to have it right before the leader reception, and we're going to have it in a way that we're hoping will be a little bit more engaging, a little bit more active, and so on. You might even be on your feet. So what I would say, though, is that if you have particular ideas that you want to bring to the format, if you've got particular experiences perhaps from other organizations that have worked particularly well, then both Carlos and I are very keen to hear from you as we put together a plan for that. You can either come and corner us at the Leadership Institute, or you can reach us via the Twitter. Email works as well, and the carrier pigeon might be less reliable, but you can try it. Great. So we've covered quite a lot on the call today. We've heard about ethics, we've heard about the Certification Council, and so on. Just want to give a quick opportunity to Dianne to just move back into the role as the chair of the Council Regions, and just share any updates there might be from IABC around the world, if that's okay.
Well, yeah, we've been certainly focused on Leadership Institute as the Program Advisory Council for LI. Second year that the Corps has been given that responsibility, that important role and responsibility. So there's a lot of energy around that. We're very excited about Task Force, a study group actually, looking into the Leader Center, because we want to make sure that the Leader Center provides the resources, the up-to-date information, the tools, just the best possible resource for our leaders. What is top of mind and top of need now that we can provide? So we're looking into certain areas of Leadership Institute where we can improve and fine-tune the resources there. And we'd love any input from our leaders in that regard. What do you want to see in the Leader Center? What is there that needs to be updated? What should be improved? What should be deleted? What should be added? Let us know. We would love your involvement very much. So that is a very exciting piece. And the regions are already looking ahead to 2016 in terms of planning their regional conferences and leadership institutes. So a lot of excitement underway around the world in terms of that. I know that Eurocom is really in high gear. We have some super high-profile presenters in the works for the European conference, and all of the others are really stepping up and presenting some great opportunities for more professional development within IABC.
Great, thank you for that, Dianne. Sounds great. And the other quick thing I was hoping we could just briefly cover here is just a broader update around technology. Carlos, would you mind just talking a little bit more about MMA testing and so on. That's right.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. It'll be my pleasure. And we spoke a little bit earlier on about the efforts that have been in place over the last 18 months or so to upgrade our technology infrastructure, which is sorely needed. So that work continues, and we'll continue to make advancements there to better serve the organization. In the immediate term, there's quite a bit of work that's been taken place related to the MMA tool that's available to chapter and regional leaders. And I want to thank everyone who, first of all, provided input into how to make the tool better. It's a tool that's very important to the management of operations of the organization of the chapter or regional level. So we want to make sure that we're delivering adequate tools there. And he had been in needs of enhancements since the launch of the new website back in the summer. It was part of the plan, and we've been able to work through our development team and over the holidays to put in place quite a few of those suggestions that have been advanced as part of this process. We have completed testing, and I also want to thank a group of chapter leaders and regional leaders who participate in the testing of the application in our test environment, make sure that we are delivering a better product than what we have now. So we've completed that work as well, and my staff now is in the process of deploying the new tool in our production environment. And we've been working on it this week. We'll continue to work on it, and we'll make an announcement with some specific changes that are going into this new enhancement on a broad announcement that will go out to our chapter and regional leaders. But you should see included on the enhancements is a better reporting structure with some of the fields that are required to be parsed, so the reports are a little bit more user-friendly, as well as regional leader access to the report at the chapter level, so that this component of MMA that was absent now is going to be available again going forward. Again, this is incremental steps, and we anticipate that the effort will continue as we look at other needs and other changes that need to be put in place, and we'll continue to make enhancements as we go forward. Thank you.
Any more questions? I see one here. Kirk Grayson are saying, are practice exams available? Carlos, is that one you want to cover? Did I lose everybody?
No, Carlos is still on mute, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I believe that question is related to the Certification Council.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of information on the website of the GCCC related to exam information, exam preparation. I don't recall exactly if we have sample questions or exams available. I'm not sure if Dianne recalls right offhand, but I don't believe that's there now.
Well, there is actually a bit of a, are you ready to take the exam kind of tool there that you can go through and see if you are ready to step up to apply to sit the exam. So yes, there is a little bit of a document there that gives you an idea of what to expect and whether you are at the ready for sitting the exam.
And I know the council, the Certification Council, GCCC, is also working to enhance FAQs and information that can make it easier for folks interested in the certification program, so they can navigate not only the process itself, but the best way to prepare to take for the application and then taking the exam as well.
Great. Thank you for that. And I actually see another one here, which potentially is a complex one because it is one that involves semantics, and it's basically here again from Kirk Grayson saying, what is training versus education? Discuss. Who'd like to take that one on? Carlos.
training versus education, I'm not sure if I'm the most qualified person to differentiate the two. We do look at education and training under the similar umbrella with our course offerings under the IABC Academy. So there's quite a bit of products, if you would, in the form of our online workshops, and our webinars are available, applicable training specifically to things that you can take back to your practice and back to your employer and demonstrate specific progress there. And educationally, more in the broad sense of some of the trends and changes that are taking place in the industry. So in that sense, from an IABC standpoint, I think the IABC Academy through its offerings, as well as the World Conference and CW, kind of span all of that from a training and educational standpoint.
So it is a really good question, and it is one that we will give you actually a much more detailed answer actually next month when we have Theomary Karmanis, the chair of the IABC Academy, with us. Theomary, when not putting in time for IABC, is on the faculty at Cornell, and she'll be able to talk a much more detailed manner on that specific question. Just checking, Melissa, got any more questions coming in?
We have another one from Kirk.
Yep.
It's looking at when the next exam will be available. I think actually she means not maybe the next exam, but the next level that might be being worked on that Dianne mentioned earlier.
Well, for the benefit of the doubt, let's cover both. If I'm not mistaken, all the exam dates actually on the website. I'll tweet a link to it, so I'll write back. But the ones that I can see immediately in front of me here are Long Beach, California, at the Leadership Institute, February 4th. And then in April, there's a set concurrently on April the 9th, which is Cincinnati, Chicago, Toronto, Halifax, London, UK, not to mistake for London somewhere in Canada, Melbourne and Calgary, and then in June, New Orleans at the World Conference, and then in October, Regina, Jacksonville, Dallas, Toronto, and also the Africa region have all committed to doing an exam at that point in time. I don't think we have the dates just yet. And we also continue taking additional interest for those. Now, with regards to the timeline for the next certification, Dianne, would you mind speaking to that?
Well, the GCCC has begun working on the Strategic Advisor level exam. This is a very intense process in terms of really refining the questions and making sure that the exam, again, meets the goals that we're seeking in terms of the ISO standard. But it will take a few months. I really don't have a specific time frame that I can give you at the moment, but do stay tuned for that. Again, work has commenced in terms of developing the questions.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, and I think that's Dianne, that's I think the Sue Human and the council are going to be in a much better position to answer that question. I think as we think about the development of certification program, it is a fairly extensive process, as Dianne has alluded, with the very first step being the job task analysis, which is really a needs analysis for the certification process, and justifying the existence of the certification, as well as the specific target market that will be that the certification will be aiming to serve, and that work, as Dianne mentioned, takes quite a bit of time, and it was for the first certification. We'll be applying very similar methodology, which brings together professionals from around the globe in the contributions to the JTA, reflective of our aim to make the JTA, the next certification, and the JTA reflective of a global need from an industry standpoint. And that work then is subsequently advanced to the development of other elements of the certification with the specific requirements, as well as then the exam development. So as you can tell, it's a fairly lengthy process in which the council has just now embarked on.
Great, thank you for that. All right, any more questions? Oh, I see one here. Mim is asking, if you fail the CMP exam, how will you know what you need to improve on? That's a great question. Carlos, can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. The part of the process of the execution of the exam, in addition to identifying pass or fail, is to provide feedback for those individuals who didn't achieve the mark, the passing mark, and then provide feedback to the individuals so that they can work on development of those specific areas in preparation for the next exam. So it's an area of attention for the GCCC in the exam execution process.
Great, thank you for that. And in fact, there is a quite comprehensive handbook for candidates. I'm just bringing it up on my screen here. I think it runs to 20 pages, so it's quite detailed. So I'm just going to tweet back a link to that in case that's useful. Okay, great. Any last questions before we start closing out? Anything additional, Melissa? Okay, so
Come through.
that though, I surprisingly, or perhaps not surprisingly, wonder whether you might give us the pitch on Gold Quill. Just very briefly, we are coming up towards the final deadline.
You're absolutely correct. The final deadline, the final late deadline for Gold Quill is next week on Wednesday, 27th of January. For people in other parts of the world, the deadline is 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, 27th of January, Pacific time, San Francisco time. So if you happen to be in Australia and Wednesday night is still, you still want to do a little bit of work, you probably actually have until Thursday morning your time, as long as it's in before midnight San Francisco time. There is not going to be any further extensions to the deadline. So I know last year when we got to the final deadline, we sort of said, surprise, there's a little bit of extra time. That's not the case this year. It was a decision by the committee that we would make all of the deadlines visible right up front. And so next Wednesday is the definitive deadline. What I would encourage all chapter leaders to do is as much promotion as you can, particularly in the next couple of days leading up to the weekend. We know a lot of people work on submissions over the weekend, and we also know that a lot of communicators leave doing that work to the last minute. So there are certainly people out there who are maybe still on the fence about whether or not to submit, and it's certainly not too late to convince them how fantastic a Gold Quill award could be for their career, their resume, their reputation. So let's get as many entries in as we can in the next few days.
Great, thank you for that. And can we just quickly pitch the fact that there are resources out there, there's images and so on with the deadlines on. Where can people find those?
Absolutely. They are on the chapter leader group. I put a note there, and they're available on Leader Centre. So there's social media images and website banners and all sorts of things in the Leader Centre marketing toolkit. And you'll see us using them on our channels as well. If all else fails and you want to just take a shortcut, you can always right-click and copy-paste from our Twitter feed or our Facebook posts as well.
Great, thank you for that. Excellent. So I'll put a link to that as well. All right, we're coming up on time. Unless there are any additional questions, I'm just going to quickly run over what we covered. We talked a little bit about the fact that we are saving $350,000 on basically moving IABC's office location in San Francisco just a little bit down the street, but we are also rejigging the way that the organization works. We're making it more dynamic and more collaborative and basically relying increasingly on people based around a whole continent, in fact, and not just one city. That should make for a more resilient organization and also enable us to cover perhaps even one more time zone than we normally naturally did. So that's fantastic news. And we also talked a little bit about the Fellows Committee, and I've already heard back from the chair of, in fact, the Fellows Task Force, and that there are a number of fellows looking forward to the call that I mentioned, where we'll talk more about changes coming to that program to help the fellows elevate and advance both IABC and the profession. We talked about reports from the Investment Committee and much, much more, and I'll tweet out a link to the notes from the January board meeting where you can read more around that. We then had a set of updates around technology from Carlos. I noticed that on the Leader Center there's a handy MMA tutorial as well. If you haven't seen that, do check that out. And also we talked about IABC around the world. Dianne shared some of the exciting things going around and also coming up specifically around Eurocom, the Europe, Middle East, and North Africa conference coming up in Rotterdam. I believe the title is Driving Business with Communication. And in fact, talking of that one, we're hoping in one of the coming forums to have Klaus Velskov, the chair of the region, come along and talk about the conference. Other things coming up on actually next edition of this one will be John Clemens, the chair of the editorial committee, and we will also have Mary Karamanis, and we'll ask her upfront the grand philosophical question with all the semantic requirements around what is training versus education. So she'll have some time to think about that. One of the things we covered today, of course, was the Sioux Human Proxy, today represented by Dianne Chase. We talked about the CMP. We answered quite a few questions and also looked to the future with the new strategic advisor level coming online in due course. And then we had Barbara Kopaffer, long-standing IABC fellow with too many credentials to count, but she talked about the discussion coming up at the Leadership Institute about the Code of Ethics, and also how we're looking to make the 2016 annual general meeting of IABC a more interactive, engaging experience, and within that actually take a vote on the proposed new Code of Ethics. And that should pretty much round it up. The only thing to finally close out on is the fact that you can, of course, find a replay of this, and we'll also post notes as we normally do at the chair.iabc.com blog. And then last but not least, let's just have that final deadline again. So Melissa, it is
11:59 p.m. Pacific time, 27th of January, next Wednesday.
Excellent. Perfect.
And my deadline, Leadership Institute, don't forget,
yes,
tomorrow. Ding, 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 ding. So make sure, get online. See you there.
Get online, get with the program, or as we say, be there, be square. So we look forward to seeing many of you at the Leadership Institute. We look forward to seeing many of you on the next Leadership Forum, and of course, even more of you at the World Conference coming up in New Orleans, if not before that in Rotterdam, and so on and so forth. Thanks, everybody. It's almost 8 o'clock here in the UK, and it's much later into the morning tomorrow in Asia Pacific. And of course, it's a little bit earlier in the day across in Philly, San Francisco, and North Carolina, and so on. So really appreciate everybody's time and attention. Some great questions there. We really appreciate everything that you do. And this is it for today. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you.